My name's Alex Field, and this is Crash Course. So anyway, back in the beginning, all the European countries were all grabbing land in America, Africa, Asia, and basically everywhere but Europe. You know that I claimed this land in the name of whatever, and so they did. Of course they came back with like 20 ships and beat the Indians up. Well, while the Spanish were doing this in South and Mesoamerica, their claims on Europe started to break off, including the Dutch.
Mr. Field, is this gonna be on the test?
Shut up, me from the past. You have a serious tanning bed issue.
Well, while Spain was doing this in South and Mesoamerica, their claims in Europe started to break off, including the Dutch. Though late like the English and French, the Dutch made a name for themselves by quickly starting a huge colonization movement that included giving the Dutch East Indian Company a monopoly on the spice trade. So the Dutch quickly started to sock it to the Portuguese by attacking their spice trade monopoly. Back in the Old World, the company conquered Java and other ports of Indonesia while pushing out the Portuguese spice merchants. This domination of Portugal continued when the Dutch claimed North Brazil and the Lesser Antilles. Now they had to build forts to protect said islands, but they kept control from the Spanish fleets. Now, of course, Spain, Portugal, England, France, Muslims, Native Americans... You know what? Everyone was mad at them.
Thought Bubbles with Alex Fields.
Henry Hudson was an English explorer in the 17th century. He explored rivers and found the Dutch colonies he discovered. Henry Hudson was sent out to find a northeast passage to China, which was non-existent, then set out to find the northeast passage, stumbling upon the Hudson Bay and River, and dying. Don't forget dying. Before his death, though, he claimed the now New York area for the Dutch, on which they founded New Amsterdam, next to the new colonies of the Brits and the French. So in 1649, the Second Battle of okay, how do you say that? Oh, that's not it. Okay, let's do that. Go. So they lost that to the Portuguese, losing claims on Brazil, then the French, and British thwart claims of the Virgin Islands and Tobago. In 1664, New Amsterdam is taken by the British, and while the Dutch get it back in 1673, they lose it the next year. From Indonesia, the Dutch started to trade with powers that existed in the East, China, and Japan. Through the Dutch, Japan watched Europe's progress, and noting innovations like the clock, began to trade with the Dutch, their only contact with the West. China, being isolationist, generally declined trade with the Dutch, preferring to trade silver with the Spanish Empire. Due to the decline of the Portuguese in the spice trade, the Dutch stood up to the task. The greatest of the merchants were the merchants of the Dutch East India Company. The company's voyages returned huge profits, sometimes 400% of the cost of the voyage was made in a trip, leading to the world's first modern megacorporation with stocks and investments being the norm. The hometown of the company, Amsterdam, grew to the major port in the area, bypassing Antwerp, the most important port under the Habsburg rule. Due to the skilled Protestant and Jews fleeing the Low Countries, wealth poured in and into the company and then the colonies. The Protestant Dutch were motivated to explore as their Catholic rivals in the south, such as Spain and Portugal, were having tons of success exploring, controlling much of the New World. Once the Dutch claimed lands, they did not do much to force Christianity on the people who were living on the land when they arrived there. And now time for the open letter. Oh, a tea bag. Hey, why did the British drink tea?
I don't know.
I mean, have you ever tasted their coffee?
Oh.
Okay, so now an open letter to the Dutch East India Company.
Open letter with Alex Fields.
Dear Dutch East India Company, why do you have to be so adjective? I mean, really, a company that could wage war and own land? That's like McDonald's SWAT team knocking on my door and taking my house. So it's really cool that you were the first mega corporation, you were the first to sell stock and all, but when you went out and conquered Java and Indonesia, it was kind of like, dude, that was my house. Did you really need to do that? Best wishes, Alex Field. The social class in the Netherlands changed from being hereditary to being based on wealth. The merchant class ran the country. People bought power instead of giving power according to ancestors. The aristocrats mixed in the population where they saw they fit. Because of the wealth ruling the social class, divisions between the classes weren't as clearly defined, and, unlike most of the rest of the world, social mobility was very possible. The middle class consisted of Protestant priests, lawyers, physicians, and small merchants. The lower class was made of farmers, shopkeepers, crafts, and tradesmen, as well as government bureaucrats. Below that are laborers, maids, servants, and sailors. Relations with the Native Americans weren't hostile. The Dutch let the Native Americans live and didn't force conformity politically, religiously, or culturally. The Dutch weren't interested in learning about the Native Americans and never questioned how the Dutch were superior in every way. So the big picture is, if it wasn't for the Dutch, we wouldn't have the Dutch East India Company, which was responsible for the creation of the first multinational stock market megacorporation. People might not have used speculative instruments such as stock futures, stock options, short selling, debt equality swaps, merchant banking, bonds, etc. So, if the Dutch hadn't existed, we may not have had the modern day stock market.